The other kind of issues are we've had some interesting things. FedEx called. Now this is a great one for you. FedEx called and they want a charge account with us because they actually don't want. It's a true story. They actually do not want their trucks stopping. And I don't know if you know. And what I found out after I was through this process with FedEx, and of course UPS also called, but the FedEx group was fascinating because they negotiated a deal apparently in New York because they were getting in trouble with parking their trucks in the streets in New York. They actually are paying now a franchise fee to the city to allow them to park in these no parking zones. And so they said, forget about just writing us the tickets. We'll save you the manpower. We're just going to kind of buy a license agreement so we can park our trucks like that. Well, basically that's what they called us up with. So our best friends are the Air Express companies, FedEx, and we just see them. I mean, we can show pictures after pictures, and they're basically told to push the envelope, get through those intersections. And I'll tell you, you get hit by one of those trucks, which goes to my point that we had an argument with the legislature that sometimes a $100 ticket isn't enough. Maybe it should be $250. Something to really give people the focus on the fact that we cannot have that issue. Now, there's one other thing I want to point out that's an interesting hook in all of this, and this is local permitting versus IDOT permits. And I just want to caution everyone, if you have a local road, that's great because you do your own permitting, you use your own engineers, and you kind of use your internal analysis for deciding what intersection. But IDOT on IDOT routes and IDOT roads, and many of the high volume traffic roads we have in Bellwood, like Manheim Road, is an IDOT road. So there's a series of administrative regulations. We won't bore you with all these gory details, but there's administrative regulations that got to be followed. Your vendor that you choose is very familiar with them and will walk you through them. But the question is, what kind of accidents have you had on those intersections? You got to show to the state a need or a purpose for it. They also are looking at the equipment. They're looking at how it affects and impacts their specific equipment that's on the street. And also what you're going to maybe run into, which we'll warn you, is review of intersection compliance. Of course, the state of Illinois has got an interesting view. If your lights are not at the highest level of operation, they're 30-some years old, they kind of come back at you in many instances and say, by the way, we want you to pay for the upgrades when you put this system in. It may not be the worst. It's a revenue source that's going to get us there. So, but just be aware. So, it's kind of wise. We started with local roads. We're using the local roads first, and then we move forward. Basically, these are where we're going, and there's future intersections that we have plans on. And I believe actually we've gotten a couple of those already filled in since the last time I gave this presentation. Again, there's numerous vendors. I think pretty much everyone is here at the conference, and you can go down and talk with them. There's pieces of their operations that are different. And I'll just talk a little bit about what you're going to see differently. I think the one piece that you want to look at when you talk to a vendor is what does their administrative adjudication piece look like? It's important because, folks, I'm going to tell you what, if you can't get the tickets to stick or you have trouble doing your adjudications with the information they're providing you with, one, your hearings are going to grow. Two, they're going to start beating you. And so you want to make sure that piece fits your satisfaction and fits in locally what you want to do. You don't want a company that's got a website that tanks on you right when the hearing starts. You got 50 people in the room, and we're going to show a little bit of some of the pieces and the way it works. And actually what I've provided you with is some of the kind of screens. The last pieces in my handout you'll see have on it, so you can take with it a copy of the ticket, a copy of the actual information that you would show at the hearing, and then the way your people look at this. And it's an important piece because this is where your police officer, if you so choose to have the police officers manage this, they actually come and look at it and say whether they're going to even issue the ticket. And there's that process we go through. But it's important that you have a good piece. So that's something you want to look critically at. I think the other thing is You can go out and visit the sites where installations have been made by these companies. And you want something that's going to blend into the landscape. And you want something that's not going to be so ostentatious that your own communities and residents complain about the looks of it. And not that you're trying to hide it from the driver, because you're required to place within a certain number of feet of that intersection. If you see it, it's a red, yellow, green light, and it says, traffic enforcement. Kind of subtle. And so they kind of get that message. But those are the things that you really want to look at within that system. We're analyzing that we're seeing 3 intersections. At the time was about 5,000 a day. That number has actually gone up. It's gone up, not gone down. Interesting. It's all new people we're catching. So it goes to show you on high volume streets that different people operate in different ways. Again, what we go through, and we'll just emphasize this, there's the violation. That information is queued up. It's screened normally by the vendor the first time. Then you have a police officer or some appointed person at the village that's responsible, or several in our case, that will sit at a screen and they will view the information. They will view the clip, the video clip. They will view the actual screen of the plate and the offense, and they will decide if it's something that a ticket should be issued to. So it's basically on the time the officer sits there and does it. So the review is completed. You print the notice. You mail the notice out. Now, what happens after that? They either stick their check, use their credit card, send it back with $100, or they decide that they want administrative adjudication. If it's administrative adjudication, they can do it by mail, or they can do it in person. We get a substantial number of them where we have the appeal. They check off a box, and our administrative adjudicator, who's been trained through and is approved like an administrative law judge in the state of Illinois, needs to be a licensed attorney. Our ordinance requires them to be practicing law 5 years before they come in. They're independent of the village administration. They're paid on a contract. We don't direct them. But anyway, they come in, and they will either view these violations on a screen, and then they will adjudge guilt or not guilty. If they're guilty, then they get a notice back, and they're told that they owe $140 now. If they're not guilty, they get that beautiful letter in the mail. And just so you all know, we're probably running at about 10 to 12% on our hearings between the mail-in and the view. We're probably having about 10 to 12 of a not finding of guilty. And there's a variety of reasons. We also provide in the ordinance for, and we explained this at the beginning, there are certain exceptions that they can talk about. But, one that, I stopped and they're going 26 miles an hour when they go through the intersection. That's not a good defense. They can come in, they can sign an affidavit that there was another driver. As the mayor alluded to, we get calls from literally parents that are working in those corridors that the children have come through. They take mom or dad's car and decide to go for a ride, and they're very curious why they might be driving through Bellwood or, on the way through Bellwood to another community. And so that's played an interesting role. And it's also made it very clear that if they're looking for trouble when they come to Bellwood, they don't want to go to Bellwood because mom and dad are going to probably get a letter if they're violating the law, and they don't want to come back. And I'm sure this gets out in the high schools and those areas. We had somebody wander in the area one day and try and sell some drugs. And our operators saw that activity on the camera, and what was funny is the cars they were going up to, we arrested the people, and they had some rock coke in their pocket. And then our police chief mailed out a letter to all of the people that were approached in the street in the cars, letting them know that these offenders had been arrested. And if basically they had been involved in any of the transactions, they themselves would have been arrested. So kind of continues to reemphasize the fact that there is a video surveillance system. And this is a component of that system. Well, we had pending legislation. It failed. We were hoping to see an expansion statewide, and hoping to see if we can get speeding in. We're going to be, again, looking at very critically in 2008. The towns that have this enforcement or are expecting to get into it, we would love to look at the support of the Illinois Municipal League as well as the village's efforts to do that. There was also, so you know, legislation that was put in that tried to get rid of it or reduce the fine, and that we were effective in stopping. When you pass legislation, it's not just you got it passed. There's always a chance they're going to repeal.